The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage as Princess Catherine sat at her mahogany desk reviewing the week ahead. Her schedule was perfectly organized, as always, with royal engagements penciled in neat handwriting across multiple pages. She sipped her Earl Grey tea while reading about a school opening ceremony planned for Thursday and a charity gala on Saturday evening. The cottage was unusually quiet that Tuesday morning. Prince William had left early for a meeting with environmental groups in London, and their 3 children were at school. Catherine enjoyed these peaceful moments when she could focus on her work without interruption. She was wearing a simple cream sweater and dark trousers, having chosen comfort over formality for her morning of planning. Her private secretary, Emma Thompson, knocked softly on the study door. Catherine looked up with a smile, expecting to discuss changes to her upcoming schedule. But Emma's face looked different today. There was an urgency in her expression that Catherine had rarely seen before. Emma stepped into the room carrying a phone in her hand. She explained that a call had just come through from Great Ormond Street Hospital in London. Catherine set down her teacup, immediately sensing that this was not a routine matter. The hospital staff had specifically requested to speak with her about a very special situation. A 7-year-old girl named Emma had been a patient at the hospital for several months. The little girl had been battling a serious heart condition that required multiple surgeries and long stays away from her family. What made this case particularly touching was that young Emma had been asking the nurses and doctors for weeks if she could meet a real princess. Catherine listened carefully as her secretary explained more details. The little girl had told everyone at the hospital that she had seen Princess Catherine on television, visiting other children. Emma had said that Catherine looked like someone who would understand what it felt like to be scared. The child had been very specific in her request, asking only to meet Catherine and no other member of the royal family. The hospital staff had been hesitant to make such a request, knowing how busy the royal schedule always was. But Emma's condition had taken a turn that made her upcoming surgery more urgent than originally planned. The medical team felt that granting her wish might give her the emotional strength she needed to face the challenging procedure ahead. Catherine felt her heart skip a beat as she learned more about Emma's story. The little girl lived with her grandmother and younger brother in a small apartment in East London. Her parents had died in a car accident 2 years earlier, leaving Emma to help care for her 5-year-old brother. Despite her own health struggles, Emma had become a source of strength for her little brother, reading him stories and helping him with his homework. The hospital staff shared that Emma had been making handmade crowns from cardboard and glitter for other sick children on her ward. She called herself the Princess of Brave Hearts and would visit other young patients when she felt well enough. Her positive attitude had lifted the spirits of many families during their darkest moments. Catherine stood up from her desk and walked to the window overlooking the cottage gardens. She could see the swing set where her own children played and imagined how different life would be if they faced such serious health challenges. The thought of a 7-year-old girl showing such courage while asking for something as simple as meeting a princess touched her deeply. Without hesitation, Catherine told her secretary to clear her afternoon schedule completely. She wanted to visit Emma as soon as possible and spend real time with her, not just a brief photo opportunity. Catherine also requested that the visit be kept private with no media coverage. This would be about connecting with a brave little girl, not about royal publicity. As she prepared to leave, Catherine felt an unusual mixture of nervousness and excitement. Something told her that this visit would be different from all the others. Catherine immediately called William on his mobile phone, interrupting his environmental meeting in London. Her voice carried an emotion that William had not heard in months. She quickly explained about Emma and the hospital visit she needed to make that afternoon. Without asking any questions, William told his staff to reschedule his remaining appointments. Something in his wife's tone told him this was more important than any official business. Within an hour, William arrived back at Adelaide Cottage to find Catherine sitting on their bed surrounded by children's books and small gifts. She looked troubled and kept picking up items only to set them down again. Catherine explained that she felt nervous about this visit in a way she had never experienced before. She had met hundreds of sick children during royal engagements, but Emma's story had affected her differently. William sat beside his wife and asked what was making her feel so uncertain. Catherine shared that most of her hospital visits followed a careful script with planned conversations and predetermined activities. But Emma had specifically asked to meet her personally, which meant the little girl had expectations that Catherine worried about disappointing. What if she said the wrong thing or could not provide the comfort Emma was seeking? They decided to approach this visit differently than any royal engagement they had done before. Instead of bringing expensive gifts or formal flowers, Catherine chose a worn copy of her favorite childhood book. The book was called The Secret Garden and had helped Catherine through difficult times when she was young. The pages were yellowed, and some corners were folded from years of reading, but that made it more special. William suggested they ask the hospital for extra time without any photographers or media presence. He wanted Emma to experience them as real people, not as royal figures performing their duties. Catherine agreed immediately, saying she needed this visit to feel genuine rather than ceremonial. They would dress casually and focus entirely on connecting with Emma rather than maintaining royal protocol. During their drive to London, Catherine and William shared stories about their own childhood fears and worries. Catherine remembered being afraid of thunderstorms and how her mother would sit with her during storms reading books until the weather passed. William talked about his nervousness before school exams and how his father would remind him that being brave did not mean having no fear but facing fear anyway. These personal memories helped them prepare emotionally for meeting Emma. They realized that their royal training had taught them how to appear confident in public, but had not prepared them for connecting with a child who was facing something truly frightening. Catherine admitted that she often felt inadequate when meeting seriously ill children because her own life had been so privileged and protected. William reminded Catherine that Emma had asked to meet her specifically because she had seen something genuine in Catherine's previous hospital visits. The little girl had somehow recognized that Catherine cared deeply about children and was not just going through the motions of royal duty. This realization helped Catherine feel more confident about the visit ahead. As they approached the hospital, Catherine made a decision that surprised even William. She told him that she wanted to make a personal commitment to Emma that went beyond a single visit. If Emma wanted ongoing friendship, Catherine was prepared to provide it regardless of royal protocol or scheduling conflicts. William smiled at his wife's determination, knowing that once Catherine committed her heart to something, nothing would stop her from following through. He felt proud to be married to someone who valued human connection over royal convenience. The car pulled up to the hospital's private entrance, where staff members were waiting to escort them quietly inside. Catherine took a deep breath, clutched her childhood book tightly, and prepared to meet the brave little girl who had already changed her perspective on what it meant to serve others. The hospital corridor was quieter than Catherine had expected as they followed the head nurse toward Emma's room. Their footsteps echoed softly on the polished floors, while medical staff nodded respectfully but kept their distance. Catherine could feel her heart beating faster with each step closer to meeting the little girl who had specifically requested her presence. Dr. Sarah Collins, the lead pediatric surgeon, met them outside Emma's room. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and gentle hands that had saved countless young lives. Dr. Collins spoke in hushed tones, explaining that Emma had been preparing for this visit all morning. The little girl had insisted on wearing her best pajamas and had spent an hour arranging her drawings and crafts around the room. Catherine learned that Emma was smaller than most 7-year-olds due to her heart condition. The illness had affected her growth, but not her spirit, according to the medical team. Dr. Collins mentioned that Emma had been asking questions about proper etiquette for meeting royalty. She wanted to make sure she said and did everything correctly during their visit. When they opened the door to Emma's room, Catherine gasped quietly at what she saw. The walls were covered with colorful drawings of princesses' castles and fairy tales. But mixed among these typical childhood pictures were drawings of doctors and nurses wearing capes like superheroes. Emma had drawn herself in several pictures, always wearing a crown and holding hands with other children. Emma was sitting up in her hospital bed wearing pink pajamas decorated with small hearts. On her head was the most beautiful handmade crown Catherine had ever seen. It was crafted from cardboard and covered with glitter that sparkled under the room's bright lights. Ribbons of different colors hung down from the sides, and small paper flowers decorated the front. The little girl's grandmother sat in a chair beside the bed, holding knitting needles and a ball of yellow yarn. She was a woman in her 70s with silver hair and warm brown eyes that reminded Catherine of her own grandmother. When she saw William and Catherine enter the room, she started to stand, but Catherine quickly gestured for her to remain seated. Emma's eyes grew wide as she saw her visitors approach. Catherine noticed that despite the little girl's obvious excitement, her small hands were trembling slightly. Emma had been practicing what to say, but now that the moment had arrived, she seemed overwhelmed by the reality of meeting actual royalty. Catherine approached the bed slowly and knelt down so she was at Emma's eye level. She complimented Emma on her beautiful crown, saying it was the most creative one she had ever seen. Emma's face lit up with pride as she explained that her grandmother had helped her make it using materials from the hospital art room. William pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, making the group feel more intimate and less formal. He asked Emma about her drawings, pointing to one that showed a princess and a little boy holding hands. Emma explained shyly that the picture showed her and her younger brother Tommy, who was staying with neighbors while she was in the hospital. Emma's voice was soft but clear as she thanked them for coming to visit her. She said she had been worried they might be too busy with important royal duties to spend time with someone like her. Catherine felt her heart break a little hearing this brave child worry about being worthy of their attention. The room felt warm and welcoming despite being in a hospital. Emma's personality filled the space with light and hope. Catherine realized that she had not come here to give Emma strength, but to receive it from this remarkable little girl who faced each day with courage and grace. Catherine sat carefully on the edge of Emma's hospital bed, while William remained in his chair close enough to join their conversation. The formal atmosphere that usually surrounded royal visits had completely disappeared. Instead, the room felt like a cozy living room where friends were gathering to chat about important things. Emma looked directly into Catherine's eyes and asked a question that surprised everyone in the room. She wanted to know if Catherine ever felt scared about anything. The little girl explained that adults often told her to be brave, but never admitted to having fears themselves. Emma said this made her feel alone because she was scared about many things. Catherine felt tears forming in her eyes as she listened to Emma's honest words. She realized that this 7-year-old was asking for something no adult had ever requested during royal engagements. Emma wanted real conversation, not polite small talk. Catherine took a deep breath and decided to be completely truthful in her response. She told Emma that she felt scared quite often, especially when she had to speak in front of large crowds of people. Catherine shared that before important events, she sometimes felt so nervous that her hands would shake just like Emma's had been shaking earlier. She explained that being a princess did not make someone fearless, but rather meant learning to do important things even when feeling afraid. Emma listened carefully to every word Catherine spoke. Then she shared her own biggest fear, which was not about her upcoming surgery, but about leaving her little brother Tommy alone. Emma explained that since their parents died, she had been the one reading bedtime stories to Tommy every night. She worried that if something happened to her during the operation, Tommy would have no one to help him feel safe. William found himself deeply moved by Emma's selfless concern for her brother. He leaned forward and told Emma about his own childhood surgery when he was just a few years older than she was. William shared how his mother, Princess Diana, had stayed with him in the hospital and read him stories just like Emma did for Tommy. He explained that his mother had taught him that being brave meant caring more about helping others than worrying about yourself. William told Emma that her love for Tommy was already making her one of the bravest people he had ever met. Emma's eyes grew wide as she realized that even princes had needed comfort and support during difficult times. Emma then asked Catherine about her children, wanting to know if Prince George ever felt scared too. Catherine smiled and shared stories about her son's worries about starting new schools and trying new activities. She explained that all children, including royal ones, needed extra love and encouragement when facing challenging situations. The conversation continued naturally with Emma asking questions about royal life and Catherine wanting to know more about Emma's dreams and hopes. Emma shared that she wanted to become a doctor someday so she could help other sick children feel less afraid. She also hoped to travel and see real castles when she was healthy again. Catherine was amazed by Emma's maturity and wisdom. This little girl understood things about courage and love that many adults never learned. Emma talked about how she tried to make other children in the hospital feel better by sharing her handmade crowns and telling them stories about brave princesses. William watched his wife's face transform during this conversation. He could see Catherine connecting with Emma in a way that went far beyond royal duty. This was two people sharing their hearts and finding comfort in each other's honesty and strength. As their conversation deepened, Catherine realized that she was learning more about true nobility from Emma than from years of royal training. Emma's genuine care for others and her determination to find joy even in difficult circumstances showed Catherine what it really meant to serve with grace and purpose. Emma suddenly looked at Catherine with a shy smile and asked if she could do something special. The little girl explained that whenever her brother Tommy felt sad or scared, she would brush his hair very gently because it always made him feel better. Emma wondered if Catherine would let her brush her hair since Catherine had shared that she sometimes felt scared too. Catherine felt her heart skip a beat at this unexpected request. In all her years of royal engagements, no one had ever asked to take care of her in such a personal way. Without hesitation, Catherine said yes and carefully moved to sit on the floor beside Emma's bed. She removed the hair clips that held her hair in its usual neat style and let it fall loose around her shoulders. Emma reached into her bedside table and pulled out a small pink brush that looked well used and loved. Her grandmother had brought it from home along with other personal items to make the hospital room feel more comfortable. Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement as she began to gently brush Catherine's hair with the same care she showed her little brother. The room became completely quiet except for the soft sound of the brush moving through Catherine's hair. William watched this tender scene unfold, feeling amazed by what he was witnessing. Here was his wife, the future Queen of England, sitting on a hospital floor while a 7-year-old girl lovingly brushed her hair. All pretense and formality had disappeared completely. Emma talked softly as she brushed, explaining that her mother had taught her this was the best way to show someone you cared about them. She said that when people felt sad or worried, having someone gently brush their hair reminded them they were not alone. Emma had been doing this for Tommy every night since their parents died, and it always helped him fall asleep peacefully. Catherine felt tears rolling down her cheeks as Emma continued brushing her hair. She realized that in this simple act a sick child was offering comfort to her rather than the other way around. Emma's gentle touch and caring words were healing something deep inside Catherine's heart that she had not even realized needed healing. As Emma brushed Catherine's hair, she began talking about her dreams for the future. She wanted to get better so she could take care of Tommy properly and maybe even have a family of her own someday. Emma said she hoped to travel to see real castles and maybe even live in a place where she could have a garden like the one in Catherine's favorite book. Catherine turned slightly so she could see Emma's face and was struck by the wisdom in the little girl's eyes. Despite everything Emma had faced in her short life, she still believed in happy endings and beautiful possibilities. Her hope was not naive, but rather a choice she made every day to focus on good things instead of dwelling on difficulties. Emma finished brushing Catherine's hair and carefully set the brush aside. She looked at Catherine with satisfaction and said that now Catherine looked like a real princess should look, with her hair flowing freely instead of pinned up in a formal style. Emma said that Catherine seemed more like herself this way, more like the kind person she had imagined meeting. Catherine reached up and touched her hair, feeling how soft and smooth it was after Emma's gentle care. She told Emma that no one had brushed her hair like that since she was a little girl herself. Catherine explained that Emma had given her a gift more precious than any crown or jewel because she had shared her love and kindness. William felt his own eyes filling with tears as he watched his wife and Emma connect in this beautiful way. He realized that Emma was teaching them both something important about what it meant to truly care for others. The little girl's natural ability to give comfort and show love was more powerful than any royal training or protocol. In that moment, sitting on the hospital floor with her hair loose around her shoulders, Catherine felt more like a real princess than she ever had while wearing formal gowns and tiaras. Emma had shown her that true royalty came from having a heart that cared deeply for others and hands that were willing to offer comfort when it was needed most. While Emma was showing Catherine her collection of handmade cards from other children on the ward, Dr. Collins quietly gestured for William to step into the hallway. The doctor needed to share important information about Emma's condition that the little girl was not yet aware of. William felt his stomach tighten as he prepared to hear difficult news. Dr. Collins explained that Emma's heart surgery scheduled for the following week was more complex than they had initially told Emma and her grandmother. The little girl's condition had worsened over the past month, and the operation now carried only a 60% chance of success. Even if the surgery went well, Emma would need multiple follow-up operations throughout her childhood and possibly into her adult life. William listened carefully as the doctor described the challenges Emma would face during recovery. She would need to stay in the hospital for at least 6 weeks after the surgery and would require careful monitoring for signs of complications. The most difficult part would be the isolation from her brother Tommy, who was too young to visit the intensive care unit where Emma would spend her first weeks of recovery. Dr. Collins also shared concerns about Emma's emotional well-being after the surgery. Children who faced such serious medical procedures often struggled with depression and anxiety, especially when separated from family members for long periods. Emma's positive attitude had been helping her cope so far, but the medical team worried about how she would handle the difficult recovery period ahead. The doctor explained that Emma did not know the full extent of her condition because they wanted to keep her hopeful and focused on positive outcomes. However, Emma was intelligent enough to understand that her situation was serious. She had been asking questions about what would happen if the surgery did not go as planned, particularly about who would take care of Tommy. William felt deeply moved as he learned more about Emma's family situation. Her grandmother was 73 years old and already struggling to care for both children while dealing with her own health problems. The family had no other relatives nearby and very limited financial resources to help with Emma's long-term care needs. When William returned to Emma's room, he found Catherine sitting beside the bed, looking at a photo album that Emma's grandmother had brought from home. The pictures showed Emma and Tommy with their parents during happier times before the car accident that changed everything. Emma was pointing to different photos and telling Catherine stories about family trips and birthday celebrations. Catherine looked up at William and could see from his expression that he had received difficult news. She continued smiling and talking with Emma while processing the weight of what William had likely learned about the little girl's condition. Catherine felt her heart breaking as she realized how much Emma was facing while still trying to stay strong for everyone around her. Emma showed Catherine a recent photo of Tommy holding a drawing he had made for his sister. The 5-year-old had drawn stick figures of himself and Emma holding hands under a rainbow with the words "Get Better Soon" written in crayon at the bottom. Emma explained that Tommy did not really understand why she had to stay in the hospital, but he missed her terribly. Catherine asked Emma's grandmother about Tommy's care during Emma's upcoming surgery and recovery. The older woman's eyes filled with worry as she explained that she was doing her best, but felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for both children while dealing with Emma's medical needs. She admitted that she often felt afraid of making mistakes that might affect Emma's health. As Catherine listened to these concerns, she began forming ideas about how she and William might be able to help beyond just this single visit. She thought about the resources available through royal charities and wondered if there were ways to provide ongoing support that would feel like friendship rather than charity. Emma seemed to sense the serious conversation happening around her and reached for Catherine's hand. She squeezed it gently and said that she was not worried about herself because she had learned to be brave. But she hoped that someone would help take care of Tommy if she could not be there for him. Emma's selfless concern for her brother, even while facing her own uncertain future, showed Catherine the true meaning of courage and love. As their visit was coming to an end, Emma reached under her pillow and pulled out a small envelope that she had been saving for this special moment. She handed it to Catherine with shy excitement, explaining that she had written a letter during the long nights when she could not sleep. Emma said she had practiced writing it many times to make sure all the words were spelled correctly. Catherine opened the envelope carefully and found a letter written in Emma's neat 7-year-old handwriting. The paper was decorated with small drawings of hearts and flowers around the edges. Emma had written about how grateful she was that Catherine had taken time to visit her and how much their conversation had meant to her. But the most touching part was Emma's question at the end of the letter. Emma had written that she had never had such an important friend before and wondered if Catherine would remember her after leaving the hospital. The little girl explained that she understood Catherine was very busy with royal duties, but hoped that maybe Catherine might think of her sometimes. Emma wrote that knowing a real princess cared about her would help her feel brave during the scary parts of her surgery. Catherine felt tears streaming down her face as she read Emma's innocent and heartfelt words. She looked at this brave little girl who was worried about being forgotten and felt something shift deep inside her heart. Without thinking about royal protocol or scheduling conflicts, Catherine made a decision that surprised even William. Catherine took both of Emma's small hands in hers and looked directly into her eyes. She promised Emma that she would write her a letter every week until she was completely healthy and back home with Tommy. Catherine explained that Emma could write back whenever she felt like it and share anything that was on her mind, whether happy or sad or scary. Emma's face lit up with pure joy as she heard this unexpected promise. She asked if Catherine really meant it and would not be too busy with princess duties to remember a little girl in the hospital. Catherine assured Emma that their friendship was now one of her most important responsibilities, and nothing would prevent her from keeping her promise. But Catherine was not finished with her promises. She told Emma that once she was well enough to leave the hospital, she and Tommy would be invited to a special tea party at Windsor Castle. Catherine explained that this would not be a formal royal event, but rather a real tea party where they could play games, eat cake, and explore the castle together. Emma could hardly contain her excitement as she heard about the tea party invitation. She asked Catherine if Tommy would really be allowed to come too, since he was only 5 years old and sometimes got nervous around new people. Catherine laughed and said that Tommy would be the guest of honor because any little boy who was Emma's brother must be very special indeed. William watched his wife make these personal commitments to Emma and felt proud of Catherine's generous heart. He added his own promise, telling Emma that Prince George was excited to meet a new friend who was learning to be brave. William explained that George sometimes worried about things too and would enjoy talking with someone who understood what it felt like to face scary situations. Emma asked Catherine to promise one more thing that seemed very important to her. She wanted Catherine to tell Prince George that he had a friend named Emma who thought he was lucky to have such kind parents. Emma said she remembered what it felt like to have parents who loved her and wanted Prince George to know how special it was. Catherine promised to share Emma's message with George and explained that her son would be honored to have such a thoughtful friend. She told Emma that George had been learning about being brave and helping others and would be inspired by Emma's example of courage and kindness. As they prepared to leave, Emma gave Catherine a small bracelet she had made from colorful hospital wristbands and embroidery thread. She had attached a tiny piece of paper with the words "Brave Friends" written in her careful handwriting. Catherine put the bracelet on immediately and promised to wear it as a reminder of their special friendship. Emma hugged Catherine tightly and whispered that this had been the best day of her whole life. She said that knowing Catherine would write to her and remember her would help her be brave during her surgery. Catherine hugged Emma back and promised that their friendship was just beginning and would continue long after Emma left the hospital healthy and strong. Catherine and William said their final goodbyes to Emma and her grandmother with promises to stay in touch and return soon. Emma waved from her hospital bed, wearing her handmade crown and holding the copy of The Secret Garden that Catherine had given her. The little girl looked tired, but happy, with a smile that seemed to light up the entire room despite the difficult days ahead. Walking down the hospital corridor toward the exit, Catherine and William were unusually quiet. The experience had affected them both more deeply than any state dinner, diplomatic meeting, or official ceremony they had ever attended. Catherine kept touching the bracelet Emma had made for her, feeling the rough texture of the hospital wristbands that had been transformed into something beautiful through a child's love. William noticed that his wife's hair was still loose around her shoulders instead of pinned back in her usual royal style. Catherine had not bothered to fix it after Emma finished brushing it, and somehow this seemed appropriate. She looked more relaxed and genuine than William had seen her in months, as if Emma's simple act of care had reminded Catherine of who she really was beneath all the royal expectations. As they reached the hospital's private exit, Catherine stopped walking and leaned against the wall. William could see that she was trying not to cry, but the emotions from their visit were overwhelming her. She told William that she felt changed by meeting Emma and was not sure how to process everything that had happened in the past 2 hours. Catherine explained that she had attended hundreds of royal engagements over the years, but had never felt so deeply connected to another person's story. Emma's courage in facing such serious health problems, while still caring more about her little brother than herself, had shown Catherine what real nobility looked like. The little girl's selfless love and unshakable hope had put Catherine's own privileged worries into perspective. William put his arm around his wife's shoulders and admitted that he felt equally moved by Emma's story. He said that meeting children like Emma reminded him why royal service mattered beyond just tradition and ceremony. Their role was supposed to be about bringing comfort and hope to people who needed it most, and Emma had shown them what that really meant. In the car driving back to Adelaide Cottage, Catherine and William continued to process their experience in comfortable silence. Catherine stared out the window at the London streets, thinking about Emma lying in her hospital bed preparing for surgery, while still worried about her little brother. The contrast between Emma's challenges and her own comfortable life felt overwhelming. Catherine realized that she had learned more about courage and grace from a 7-year-old girl than from all her royal training combined. Emma's ability to find joy and hope in the midst of fear and uncertainty was something Catherine wanted to carry with her into every future engagement. The little girl had shown her that true connection happened when people shared their real selves rather than hiding behind formal roles. William watched his wife's face as she processed these thoughts and felt grateful to be married to someone whose heart could be so deeply touched by others' stories. He knew that their visit to Emma would change how Catherine approached all her future work, with children and families facing difficult circumstances. Emma had reminded them both why their royal platform mattered. When they arrived home at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine went immediately to her study and began writing the first letter she had promised to send Emma. She wanted to tell the little girl how much their meeting had meant to her and to share some encouraging thoughts for Emma to hold on to during her surgery. Catherine also made notes about ways she and William might be able to help Emma's family beyond just the personal friendship they had begun. That evening, when Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis returned from school, Catherine told them about meeting Emma. She shared Emma's message for George and explained how brave Emma was being while facing scary medical procedures. The children listened carefully and asked if they could help Emma in some way, showing the same caring hearts that their parents had demonstrated. Catherine looked at her own healthy children playing together after dinner and felt grateful for their safety, while also thinking about Emma and Tommy separated by hospital rules and medical necessities. She knew that meeting Emma had changed her perspective on everything and would influence how she raised her own children to understand the importance of compassion and service to others who needed their help and friendship. In the weeks following their hospital visit, Catherine kept her promise to Emma by writing weekly letters filled with encouragement stories about her own children and updates about life at the royal residences. Emma's grandmother would read these letters aloud when Emma felt well enough to listen, and the little girl would dictate responses, sharing her thoughts about the surgery recovery and her excitement about eventually reuniting with Tommy. Emma's heart surgery took place on a rainy Thursday morning in November. Catherine and William waited anxiously for news, even though they were attending a scheduled engagement in Scotland. When Dr. Collins called to report that the operation had been successful, Catherine felt relief wash over her like nothing she had experienced before. Emma had made it through the most dangerous part of her journey. The recovery process was longer and more difficult than anyone had hoped. Emma spent 3 weeks in intensive care, followed by another month in the regular hospital ward. During this time, Catherine's letters became even more important, providing Emma with something to look forward to each week. Catherine wrote about her children's school activities, seasonal changes in the castle gardens, and her hopes for Emma's future. Catherine also began quietly arranging support for Emma's family through various royal charities. She coordinated with organizations that helped families dealing with childhood illness, ensuring that Emma's grandmother received assistance with Tommy's care and transportation to visit Emma. Catherine was careful to make these arrangements feel like community support rather than royal charity. 3 months after the surgery, Emma was finally healthy enough to leave the hospital and return home to her grandmother and Tommy. Catherine had arranged for the reunion to take place in a private garden at one of the royal residences, where Emma and Tommy could play freely without media attention. Watching the siblings embrace after their long separation brought tears to everyone's eyes. Catherine kept her promise about the special tea party at Windsor Castle, organizing an afternoon that felt magical rather than formal. Emma and Tommy explored the castle gardens, played games with Catherine's children, and enjoyed a feast of cakes and sandwiches. Emma wore her handmade crown throughout the visit, and Tommy was amazed by everything he saw. Prince George and Emma became instant friends, bonding over their shared understanding of what it meant to face scary situations with courage. The experience with Emma changed how Catherine approached all her future engagements with children and families. She began requesting more time and less formality, wanting to create genuine connections rather than photo opportunities. Catherine started carrying small, meaningful gifts instead of expensive formal presents, and made an effort to learn each child's name and story before visiting. Emma continued to write letters to Catherine throughout her recovery and beyond. The little girl's dream of becoming a doctor grew stronger as she healed, and she began volunteering at the hospital once she was well enough. Emma would visit other sick children, sharing her story of hope and recovery, while wearing the crown her grandmother had made for her first meeting with Princess Catherine. 2 years later, Emma's health had improved dramatically, and she rarely needed hospital visits. She and Tommy had grown closer than ever, and both children excelled in school with support from educational programs Catherine had quietly arranged. Emma never forgot the promise she had made to help other sick children, and spent weekends at the hospital reading stories and teaching craft projects to young patients. Catherine often thought about that afternoon in Emma's hospital room, when a 7-year-old girl had brushed her hair and taught her what it really meant to serve others with love. Emma had shown Catherine that true royalty came from caring deeply about individual people rather than just performing ceremonial duties. The friendship that began with a phone call about a sick child's wish had grown into something that changed both their lives forever. Years later, when Catherine attended formal events wearing beautiful gowns and sparkling tiaras, she still kept Emma's handmade bracelet in her jewelry box as a reminder of the day she learned about real courage. Emma had taught her that the most important crown was not made of gold and jewels, but of love, kindness, and the willingness to care for others, especially when they needed it most. Their friendship had begun with Emma asking to meet a princess, but had ended with Catherine understanding what it truly meant to be one.